Hey everybody, this is Evan Abrams. Hopefully you are hearing me. If you're not hearing me, just let me know in the chat. This is a live lesson in which we are going to be learning about pre-production in motion graphics and visual effects and just pre-production in general. We took a poll on the community page on the YouTube channel. So if you're not familiar with the community page, it's a new feature of YouTube, new like maybe a month old or something, where creators can ask polls and questions and post video like things. I don't know really what it's for, but one thing you can do is ask what people are interested in learning, and an overwhelming poll on there said people want to learn about pre-production. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But if this is not a thing you're into, hey, don't worry about it. Hang out. You might find something you like. And something else to know, we are going to be doing live streams every month. So the last Friday of every month, I'm going to try to, just jump on here for an hour or so and talk about a topic of some kind and answer some questions. So, yes, Sagnik, I don't know how to pronounce everybody's name, so I'm going to do a terrible job. The stream will be uploaded to YouTube. It'll be archived for all time, so all the mistakes I make, all of the cuss words, everything will be up always, and it's going to be great. So today we'll probably spend maybe half an hour to an hour talking about pre-production. So without further ado, let's get people in the chat asking whatever questions they have. Where are they stuck in their pre-production process? And if no one says anything, I'm just going to start showing you how I does it. So let's just tab over to the chat here, see what's up. Jerson, yeah, it's going to be available later. Hopefully, if there's a playback error, then it may be actually recording nothing. So what's up? Oh man, looking in from Korea, Reno Film. Awesome, that's great. I'm glad to see me posting again. Thank you, that's good. Awesome. All right. How do I do my style of hair? Oh, well, you just shave all your hair off. That's how you do it. Just be a bald and life will be fine. Let's see. Fireflies, I don't really know. What is pre-production? You know what? Maybe that's the way to start. Muji A. That is the pre-production is the process that you do before you start making things. So pre-production involves literally all things that could be related to. We're talking about scripting. We're talking about storyboarding. We're talking about all the steps you need to taking all these steps, this preparation to make sure before you start actually filming things, drawing things, putting a lot of time and effort down one lane, that you are sure about the direction, that the client is sure about the direction, that you have a plan, and that you have something you're going to stick to and execute, that you've made a bunch of good choices early on, and then you're able to get into stuff. So if you just jump into production right away, you're kind of like, whoa, I'm all over the place, whoa, and you just kind of spiral around. So it's important to have a process, stick to the process, stick to the plan, and that'll make sure that things just go smoother, they're more cohesive, you get them done faster. Pre-production is the kind of plan. It's like trying to cook without a recipe, or without knowing what ingredients are in your fridge. You're just like, well, I'm going to make some pasta. And then you go into the fridge and like, oh man, no tomatoes. Well, then I guess I'm making a different kind of pasta. And anyway. So yeah, what other questions do we got going on? Freestyle or storyboard? Answer is always storyboard. Do storyboard stuff. Important to do. Don't skip steps. So the steps are basically... So yeah, Andrew's asking, what is my process of pre-production? So, and other people have been asking sort of what I get from clients, how does that go? So usually what happens for me is when I'm talking with a client, they might have a script already because their marketing department wrote one and they think it's very good. They might just have a nebulous idea. They might have nothing. They might say, well, I want to promote this product. I want to do these. I have these goals. And whether they have a script or they come with a voiceover or whatever they're coming with, it's important to sit people down and to say, well, what are your goals for this piece? What do you want this piece to achieve? What do you want the audience to feel or understand? What's important? So that's sort of part of my process. If there is no client involved, then I stare at myself in the mirror and I say, Evan, what's important about this project? What are we doing? What are the goals? And make sure I codify that. So that's kind of step one. So What do you want to achieve? That's the first thing you want to figure out. What's the point of doing this? Why am I making a video at all? Is video the way to go with this? So solve that question first. That's like step 0. Step 0 is, why am I making this video? The next step is to decide what exactly you are going to be... I did not understand anything. Well, that's fine. A lot of things are very confusing sometimes. But the idea is, before you do a thing, plan to do a thing and have a concrete plan. So yeah, step 0, why am I making this? Should it be a video at all? Should it exist at all? Why is this important? Once you've answered that question, you can move on to figuring out what the content actually is. All right. And for that, maybe it's a script. And by a script, I mean a bunch of words that someone is going to say. Not all motion graphics pieces have, they sort of have words. Not everything has a voiceover, but everything has a script. Everything has a script of content, right? So it's really important that you understand what content needs to be communicated. All right. So the idea that what you're talking about, we have these goals. Now, what specifically are we going to say or show to do that, right? So the idea is that you want to start to codify these things into documents of some kind. And one of the most basic documents you might encounter is the script. So we talked about script a little bit. This is not scripting like coding, boop, 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 bloop, bloop, bloop. But a script as in, for example, it could just be a bunch of words. It's like, this is what the narrator is going to say. They say this, so they say this, they say this, they say this. So what I'm just going to do real quick is I'm going to jump to my desktop here, and you are looking at a delightful Google document that is Lou Gehrig's Farewell to Baseball, a thing that Lou Gehrig said when he retired. Lou Gehrig, a baseball player who had ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. Someone correct me if I'm totally wrong about that, but he had a degenerative disease and had to quit baseball. These are his final words. I find them always very moving to read. And let's say, though, this was the script you were handed. It could be any collection of words, but what's really important is that you go through the script. Whether you've written the script or someone else has written the script, you need to go through the words, and this is if we're doing a voiceover-driven piece. It's important to go through this and just see, from a script perspective, could this easily translate into visual ideas? Is it broken up into ways? Do we need to keep breaking it up further? So, for example, we might say, well, we need to maybe break up every sentence. So we start breaking up, this is a discrete sentence, this is a discrete sentence. And if there's already an audio track, you need to listen to that and understand what's going on. And so it's important to sort of figure out where the breaks are, how are things going to flow, how will it be if someone is being recorded to say this stuff, and you sort of want to start breaking this up into its constituent parts. So when we're looking at things that are unique and need to be broken, sentences are usually a good place to break things up, because that is where ideas are going to change. All right. So once we're done sort of breaking it apart, then we've considered the script and we've gone back and forth with the person who wrote the script, and we say, well, this sentence doesn't really work. It's very nebulous. Then we're sort of ready to go on. But what's important is at the script phase, when we haven't drawn anything. Ooh, I just bumped the microphone. That's going to be terrible. In the script phase, you can go through and you can sort of pull out and adjust things that are kind of like nothing sentences, where someone might be saying, well, we're restating the same thing in 2 sentences maybe. This is a time to clean that up. You want a script that can read on its own and be interesting to listen to on its own. No amount of motion graphics can make sort of boring script, can save it. You can make it more interesting to sit through, but if people are tuning out of the message, then that's not accomplishing the goals of the piece, right? And whether the goals of the piece are to sell a new phone, whether the goals are to increase charitable donations, whether the goals are to show off how interesting your motion graphics are. If you're fighting against a script that puts someone to sleep, that's very difficult. And I mean, it can be tough to go back to a marketing department or someone and say, hey, this script is not working out. I just don't think that it's really great. In my experience, I've animated a bunch of these. This one's just not doing it. Is there anything you can do? Maybe remove half of the words, half the sentences, that kind of thing. So this is where you want to start paring it down. And I really recommend, if someone's coming to you with a long script, start paring it down. All right. So that's step 0. And now step 1 is a script of some kind. And the script, like I said, might not be what someone is saying. It might actually be just a series of things you want to have in the frame, in which case you still need to write those down. Write down what is important, when it's important, and figure that out. Because once you've got the script going, then we can move on to what is called the AV script. So we've got a script, and now we move on to an AV script. I think I've talked about this a lot, the importance of AV scripting, and we'll go on. I just want to check the chat to see what's going on. Oh, who are the people involved when pre-production stage? Yags? Jags? Yags? I feel it's Yags for some reason. Correct me in the chat if your name is not Yags, but Jags. And how many people? It really depends. There is no hard and fast answer. Generally, the people involved, in my experience, are the person who wrote the script. They're usually involved. Whoever the decision maker is who has to sign off on this stuff, they're probably involved, or they at least should be involved. You really want to get sign off from whoever is going to be responsible for ultimately giving sign off, so that you're having people along the way throughout the process saying, I approve this step, we can move on. I approve this step, we can move on. So you don't want someone to, at the end of pre-production, when you're like, oh man, it's time to start drawing some characters. Let's drop this pigeon. That's a lovely pigeon. And then someone high up comes back, whoa. I've never seen this AV script. No pigeons, no this, no that. And then it's like, oh, but I just started work. Well, you should have got approval earlier. So depending on the scope of the project, depending on who's involved, just know that you should involve people who need to approve things, right? And that is sort of important to the process, that we go through a pre-production process, we go through these steps, so that people can be on the same page, so that clients know what to expect. And you might have to do some hand holding. You might have to do a little bit of explaining, and it just happens. How was my day? My day was great. It's so far so good. I mean, it's 10 o'clock, so first tea of the day. Good tea helps save my voice. So yeah, any questions about where we're at vis-a-vis scripting, vis-a-vis who should be involved in the process? What are my usual projects? I don't really have a usual. Like, I'm doing everything from ads in arenas. Sometimes I'm doing web video. Sometimes I'm doing television spots. I do a lot of corporate internal, so kind of like training videos. That's kind of fun. Really, I do whatever. I'm all over the place. If people have a problem, I try to solve it. So I work with. There is a morning. That's right. How much time do I usually plan for pre-production? Well, that's pretty. Now, Ben, it's only awkward if you make it awkward. Okay, if you're holding your client's hand and they don't like it, you just need to tell them to relax, and just feel the energy between you. I actually, I say that, but I've rarely met clients face to face because I do not like to leave my home. Let's see here. Where am I looking at here? What do I include in my contracts? Andrew, I think we'll save any kind of contract discussion for that is a totally other thing. Maybe that could be the next live stream. Maybe we'll get into contracts then. If it's a pressing thing, though, Andrew, shoot me an email and we can kind of go over it there. But we will save a different live stream for just talking about business, because that is another can of worms. But in general, I allow for one revision and then that's it. But what do you do if you get stuck at pre-production? If you are stuck, and that might happen, right? You might get into a situation, super funky son. If you're stuck in the pre-production process, then what you need to do is, well, as you're stuck with anything, you need to work the problem. So you have to always take it back to, what are the goals of the piece? Is this accomplishing the goals? Oh, I don't have any ideas. Well, maybe I need to do some research. Are there other people on the project you can just talk to? Call them up on the phone, babidi-bop-bop. And that's sort of important to turn things into a dialogue. If you're spinning your wheels on your own, involve other people, talk to people who are not involved on the project at all. Hopefully you have friends who are out there, talk to your significant other, somebody there. But I don't really believe in creative blocks as much. Like, oh man, the muse is not talking to me today. Design is about solving problems, work the problem, and that's about it. How do I choose a style for the project? How do I keep my styles fresh and different? Well, this is also a consideration. So we've talked about a script there, Andrew. We've talked about when we make it a script, and now we have to sort of start making visual choices. All right, and this is the time to get into. We've decided what the content will be. We know what the goals will be. Now we have to start making visual choices about what we're going to see, right? And this is where you start assembling mood boards or vision boards. I don't want to sound like I'm pooping on the idea of vision boards or mood boards, but dream boards. You just put up a bunch of pictures about what your dreams are. But it's the same thing. You start thinking about what will visually serve the goals of the piece. What styles is it going to be heavy on geometry? Is it going to be heavy on solid shapes? Are you feeling gradients? Is texture going to be a thing that works here? Is a lack of texture? Is heavy lines? Is light lines? That kind of thing. That's someone's asking me not to ignore them. Well, I don't want to ignore you, but there's a lot of things in the chat. So there's a lot of things. I'm gonna miss a lot of stuff when I'm talking, but it happens. I'm just one guy reading the comments. So back to the original thing where we're talking about the idea of how do you make something how do you decide on the visual style and how do you keep it fresh? Those are two conflicting ideas, because deciding on the style means creating something that serves the goals, and that may not necessarily be fresh. That may not necessarily be new. You're not always going to be innovating. You don't always have to make something innovative. Sometimes clients don't want to innovate. They need to stick within brand guidelines, or what will work, what will serve the project best is something that has been done before. Don't innovate. Don't make something new for newness sake. It's new and different. You've never seen it before. Well, that's great. But if it doesn't serve the goals of the piece, you have beefed it real hard. The expression beefed it is to do bad. So if you're not creating visuals that serve the piece, that is not good. So after the scripting phase, you want to be assembling sort of the visual language of the piece and figuring that out. But yeah, that's where that is. Boop, boop, boop. Trying to think. What other questions have been coming up here? I have a very limited kind of chat window to kind of peer into the past of what folks have been saying, so I will miss a lot of questions. A lot of folks use like the super chat to make sure their question is not missed. I don't want to say you have to do that, but it's a great strategy if things are getting missed. So How do I estimate the amount of time that it'll take on a project? Well, that's kind of what we're doing here in the pre-production process, right? Once we start kind of getting into the script, and then we convert it into an AV script, which I think we'll do coming up next, then you can start to estimate how long will it actually take to achieve these things, right? And that is super important, to be able to just spend an hour to take your document, to turn it into something that you can understand and converse with someone and say, this is what I'm thinking. If we want to achieve something that is of this, it's this complex, well, it's going to take me this many hours to do it. And I can envision that because I'm breaking it down into little pieces and I'm adding up the hours and I'm figuring that stuff out. So that's kind of the next phase. So it's we'll see what we can do there. So let's move on, because I want to take you to the next phase. What do you do after script? Well, you go to AV script, right? So if we just go back to the desktop real quick, and we'll see what. Do my eyes hurt from looking at my computer for so long? Yes, and they hurt every day until you die. That's what's horrible about eyes and computers. Sit a comfortable distance back from your monitor, take regular breaks, wear glasses. So those are good ideas. All right. So, okay. So we were looking at a script, and now we're going to look at an AV script. Now, AV stands for audio video script, audio visual script. It is where you will have a column of what you will hear, or it might not be audio, because what if there is no audio component, there is no voice component. So you might call this the audio or content, where it's what is the essential thing to communicate to people in this column. So you've got content, context, these things are important. So what I recommend doing is you just start taking your sentences and just plugging them into the audio component, right? So then you're just copying and pasting. However you do this is fine by me. I don't really care. But we're just taking these sentences, these statements, these blocks, which if you were here for the earlier thing where I said break up your thingamabob into a bunch of bits, and then we have discrete bits, and now they're in a table. Boom, we got discrete bits, they are in a table. And there we go. I'm seeing some questions in there asking about project cost. We might save those kinds of things for a more in-depth talk later, but cost is determined generally by how many hours it's going to take me to achieve something, which I'm able to estimate through experience, as well sort of any extra things like, do I have to shell out for the music and blah, like what things are going to end up on the invoice. That's how you figure out cost. Anyway. Let's see. What do we got here? Client has no idea on what they want. Usually create a couple of different drafts. Energy, and then it's wasted. I think I didn't choose any suggestions. So Jonathan Box, Jonathan. So your question is sort of, the client doesn't know anything, or they don't have a clear vision in their mind. There's no nugget to be mined from their brain minds, and that's often the case. People say, I want this, I have these ideas, this goal that I want a motion graphics video, everyone's got one, why don't I have one? Well, and then you say to them, well, what do you think it should look like? Well, you're the designer, you're an expert, so here's where the trouble comes in. Oh man, Theo Dillon, thank you so much. Jeez, big ups to Theo, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you dig my stuff. Thank you. Thanks for the tenor, baby. That's great. I'm loving it. Let's see. Kunal, probably not, since we're talking about pre-production today. This is everything that happens before you animate, so we probably won't actually animate something. Anyway, I got distracted. Let's see. So, I think we were talking about AV script, right? We were talking about What do you do if the client doesn't have any ideas? Well, they're paying you to have ideas. And as long as you communicate with them, well, I'm fine to go on a fishing trip with you, but you got to pay for the gas. Make sure you're billing people for the time that you spend doing this stuff. So yeah, big ups, Theo. You're the man. Every little bit keeps the channel going. So it's awesome. The more funds that come from the YouTube channel, the more time I can devote to it and less time I have to spend, that kind of thing. Can I evaluate your last work? I could. It may be very harsh. If you want sort of work evaluated, you should email it to me. That's the best thing to do. So, no fun stuff. Kunal, this is the funnest stuff of all. This is where dreams are made of. This is where you get to plan out all your ideas and you haven't even failed at drawing something yet. This is the best time. And we'll figure it out. So I want to go back to the AV script. This may not be fun. This may be the vegetables you have to eat in order to create good work, but all good work kind of comes from this place of planning, of figuring out what you're going to do, right? And that kind of thing. So if you've got your audio, you've put that in a column, then you want to move on to the video component. And the video component is, what do we see when that is being said, right? So what I would recommend is just start writing out ideas. Like, what would you see? Maybe when we say, fans, for the past 2 weeks, you've been reading about a bad break I got. Well, maybe it's unfolding newspaper to article and picture, right? So, visually, maybe that makes sense. That as we're hearing the words of Lou Gehrig, fans, for the past 2 weeks, you've been reading about a bad break I got. A paper is like unfolding, and it's showing like the sad news story in there. Maybe teardrops fall on paper. Man, I can't even spell today. Paper from POV of reader. That might be something to show. That the audience is sad. That could be something. And then move on. Like we've written down enough things to sort of communicate to ourselves, or if we were presenting it to somebody else, some ideas, and we're starting to get that visual. What are we seeing? What's happening? All right, and then maybe we zoom into picture on page. And we go like through the paper into the world of the photo. So the idea like, oh, well, there's this photo of Lou Gehrig, and then we'll just push the camera through that, and then we're into like him giving the speech on the mound. Lou is giving speech on the mound, that kind of thing. So we're moving sort of from the newspaper into a thing. And now something that you can think about right now is when you look at this thing, we can already start to identify Lou is giving a speech on the mound. Well, now we need the character of Lou. We need to draw him, right? So you might want to start highlighting things like, oh, oops, definitely don't highlight things like that. You might start highlighting anytime you've written a character down. So you're sort of, what characters have I got here? Oh, we have character of Lou. So we're making notes about what is happening. How complex is this getting? We're already describing a 3D movement through something. We are describing unfolding a newspaper. Is that going to be complex? I don't know. We'll figure that out. But this is where we are talking about the kind of idea that you want to kind of come up with the big picture ideas from a big perspective without considering how you're going to achieve it. At this stage, don't think about how you're going to achieve it. Don't worry about how you'll achieve it. Who cares? Should be grande? Grande men. Look at these grande men. I don't know. Maybe. I think it might be the American spelling of grand is without an E. I don't know. I just copy and pasted it from the internet. Anyway, let's move on and let's fill out the rest of the video component, right? And so Andrew, we'll get to sort of the technical pre-production after we've sort of sorted the project out. That's sort of a workflow consideration, and yeah, that's something to consider later. But Been in the ballpark 17 years, never received anything but kindness and encouragement from fans. So you'd want to consider, what does that mean? Well, if we've zoomed into the picture of the page, we're at Lou Gehrig on the diamond. Then we kind of like move around the ballpark, show pennants, show history, show fans weeping or cheering. So now we're kind of getting into what other ideas that we're talking about. And then we look at these grand men, grand spelled with an E, exactly. And so then we're going to say, well, look at these grand men. Then we go, let's see, dugout or roster. Which of you wouldn't consider it the highlight of his career just to associate with them even one day? Sure, I'm lucky. Now, here's kind of where we get to do a little bit of a turn, right? We could say something that you would say here is, do we want a tonal shift? When he says, sure, I'm lucky, we would say, Lou in hospital. So we're making a tonal shift that we're going to go from sort of the dugout here. And so how would we sort of set that up? We'd say like lights go out one at a time. Light comes on in hospital. Lou in hospital receiving treatment. And in that case, we get to set up sort of our emotional arc here. So if we're talking about scripting and AV scripting, the audio could be saying one thing, and then we juxtapose it with video, and now we're doing something else. But now we've got something we can present to and discuss with other members of the team. So someone was asking, well, what if one of the stakeholders doesn't have any ideas? Well, you can present him this and say, here's my ideas. Yes, no. You haven't spent any time drawing anything. You just wrote some sentences. You can do this in about half an hour. All right, it doesn't take time. You do this, you have something to discuss. And that's where we're at. Yeah, we can get to tutorials about stuff in the future. The plan in the future is to end up with like one tutorial a month. So this is... Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. You're going to do the AV script. Now you've got an AV script to discuss, right? And, hopefully this gives you a way to talk and discuss things. Welcome to your first live stream, DCD. It's good to have you here. So yeah, at this point, I have missed probably a lot of questions. There's also a delay. So there's like a 1 minute delay, I think, on me actually being able to read the chat, which is sort of difficult. Now I don't know where my mouse is. Okay, now we're back to me staring at you guys. So, how's the stream doing? Stream is good. Stream is strong. Great. We're about half an hour in. This is where I drink some more tea. And wait to see. Here we go. How is this process usually different from regular video production? So far, we are actually not very different, Paul van Summeren. Paul, are you Dutch / from the Netherlands? I can tell from that van that you might be. So the process is actually very similar from either a live scenario or to sort of motion design. And the reason it's similar is that we're achieving the same thing. You got goals for the piece. You get your AV script out there, which in the case of sort of a live production will eventually create a shot list, right? And the shot list will be like, you're going to go out and get these angles. But the next move from here is going to be to jump into storyboards and style frames. Once we've sort of decided in words what we want to see, then we can start communicating that with pictures. So we're starting to firm up exactly what this stuff is. So we're going from very nebulous. We started with nothing but words that came out of Lou Gehrig's mouth, and a lot of Dutchies hanging out. Here's a pro tip, everybody. I highly recommend going to the Netherlands. It's a lot of fun. Dutchies represent. Oh, that's dope. Up to our eyeballs in fan whatever. Hey, Grand Rapids, it's great. So to get back to the pre-production stuff, that you are taking something nebulous and you want to turn it into something increasingly concrete, which is the goal, so that you're able to define and throw ideas away and all this stuff. And that's kind of the idea, that once you've got things firmed up, now we can go actually draw things. And because drawing is labor intensive, we want to make sure we know what we're drawing and what we're communicating. So once you've got your AV script done and you've got someone to sign off on it, you've got someone sort of agreed with where you're at, then it's time to sort of roll on to draw stuff. And drawing things could mean style frames. It could mean storyboards. It could mean those two things, usually. And if people are fine with your style frames, usually you want to do that first, so that you're assessing different styles that could communicate this stuff, right? Because we could do like a really liney, like everyone's lines with no solids, only two colors. These are the choices that we make next. So that's like the third thing to sort of the thing is to come up with. So we've got step zero. Do we need to make this thing? Why are we making it? Step one, what is the content we're going to put out? Step two, turn that codify it into an AV script. All right. And then step three, start putting visuals with it. So how do we start putting visuals to it? Well, this is when you go out and start doing research. You start maybe instead of drawing your own stuff, you start going out and just pulling images from Google Images or wherever, or you start sending the client videos like, do you like this one? Do you like this one? Do you like this one? And trying to narrow down what it needs to look like. And for your own process, you want to be thinking, oh man, what style do I think I want to work in? What communicates the hopefulness and heartbreak of Lou Gehrig? Should it be a photorealistic thing? Should it be whatever? But this is, you've never heard the term style frames before. Could I expand? Absolutely. Animatic is what comes after storyboard. Absolutely. Pete McPartland. Pete McPartland, let's talk a little bit about style frame. Well, client education is a pain on the buns, but if you want things to go smoothly, people have to be informed. They got to know what's up. So style frames. A style frame is literally just taking a frame that you might experience in the final piece and drawing it. Sorry, I have a new dog and it's being funny in the corner. So a style frame is when you're really just drawing something to give the client an idea what this will look like. A style frame is similar to concept art. It's very similar to trying to communicate the feeling and the look, trying to get as close to the final look as you can, such that the client could say, oh, if this was a frame of the thing, if this was a frame of the final piece that came across my desk, would I be happy? Thumbs up, thumbs down? How would I feel? Can we gauge the feeling? And that's the point, is you're looking at the style frame to gauge the feeling. If something like this came across your desk at the end, would you be happy with that? That's the idea. Shutterstock, yay or nay? I don't know. What are you using it for? They're a company. I've worked with them before to do things, so I can't say fully nay, but I don't know what you're using them for. Anyway, someone was asking, what is a reasonable time for each step in the pre-production process? Some clients expect it to be done in a few hours. Well, Jerson? Yerson? I am the worst at names. So what is a reasonable amount of time? Well, that really depends. So if you have a really long script, might take a while. It might take you a day to knock that out. If a client is like, hey, you need to speed it up with that, well, you should probably talk to them on the phone like a real human being and say, hey, this is an important, crucial step. It's important for us to make sure that we get this right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send you the idea as soon as we've got them. I'm just going to workshop this stuff around with the team, but it's really important here at this critical first step. You want the first steps to be real good, so you want to make sure you do that. But at the same time, it's not an exhaustive process. You can poop out a terrible first draft. Just poop it out. Poop out that terrible first draft. Who cares? Because there's going to be a terrible second draft coming out, and then maybe a terrible third draft. Your first one is not going to be gold, and it doesn't have to be. The point is to get something done quickly so that someone else can talk about it. If it takes you an hour to punch out visual ideas about what you want to see, that sounds like a lot of time for me, but I've been doing this longer, so it's not super exhaustive for me. But at the same time, don't pressurize yourself to have the perfect solution right away. If someone's pressuring you and they say, "Hey, give me the AV script. I'll see you again at 2:00. Give me that AV script." Well, you're like, "All right, I'll give you something, and then we'll talk about it." So, boop, 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 boop. Now we can talk about it. Or are they pressurizing you in the sense that they want to be involved? They want to feel involvement. Maybe someone above them needs to see something. I don't know. Maybe that's the case, that, pressure is coming down on them, so they put it down on you, and so on like that. So you want to say, hey, you want to see progress, you want to make things go, well, let's get involved. Let's sit down and we'll do it together. As a pair, both of us will hang out, and, I'll be on the call, you'll be on the call, we'll both open up the Google Docs, we'll look at it together, and if I have an idea, I'll write it down. You have an idea, you write it down, and we'll talk about it live. So if the client is totally ignorant and they're like, well, I don't have fucking time for that, get out of my way. Oh, now I made a swear, and now this is an expletive show. But maybe they're like, I don't have time for that. I'm like, well, I do have time for that, so I'm going to do that. You're paying me to do it, so let's do it up. And if you don't want to be involved, don't be involved. You just have to talk to people like they're people, and that's sort of important, and ensure that they understand that this is a process. And the big thing is, I've encountered sometimes some producers that are not nice or something like that, but I don't know, after an hour of talking to someone, eventually we're both normal people. So it's rare that I encounter someone who is a legit monster. Anyway, is asking too many questions with your clients a bad thing? In which way would it be a bad thing? Which questions are bad? Maybe if they're like, oh, don't ask me questions, just do it. And then you're like, all right, well, then don't complain with what I come back with. But it's not asking questions. It's having a discussion. It's a dialogue. It's not, here's a laundry list of questions. Oh, thank you for answering them. I'm going to go now. You're meant to talk with, not at. Which is funny because I'm talking at you right now, but I hope you feel that we're talking with each other. I try and polish the style frames as much as I can and base the final on them. Am I working the wrong way around? Not necessarily, but Edwin Subramani? Edwin Subramani. Let's see here. So, should a style frame be what the final thing will look like? Certainly. You're working towards it. But like I said, all of the pre-production is meant to be a kind of map, a guide. It's meant to allow discussion with other members of the team. It's for you to throw out ideas that are bad. It's for you to see what works, what doesn't work. So working forever down one line, down one track, is not necessarily the way to go. Producing a few ideas and, oh, well, these are garbage, but don't put a lot of time into each one. And if the client is ultimately saying, that's the one, let's go down that road, all right, then sure. Yeah, then go ahead and refine and make it beautiful and that kind of thing. But it's communicative tools, not and it's communication across time with yourself and with others. So it's not meant to be final. That's when you're making assets, right? Some people, myself included, sometimes make storyboards that become the assets that I harvest. It just happens that way sometimes because I'm lazy, but it happens. Do I think about music and sound before or after you animate? It's a good question. Da, 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 da. So music is another consideration. So here at the AV script stage, which is sort of all we've done here, it's as far as we've gotten in 45 minutes, but I think that's pretty good. You can also start to make musical choices. This is the time when the project is starting to get firmed up where you can say, hey, client, here's some music. It's helpful to have music before you start animating because animating to music is easier, for me anyway, than scoring music to animation. Because I find music hard and I am musically illiterate. But having music already in place can set the flow, can set the tone. Editing to music is very nice because you've got the beats to edit on, you've got the emotional arc to follow. You're changing scene when it goes no 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 no. So you're able to sync those up. So I would recommend before legit animation is happening, have some music in place. It really helps with the synchronicity of things. And again, I am missing a lot of questions. They're all just flying by. What's the point when I quit from a project? When the client tells me there's no money and they can't answer my phone calls. That is when I quit from a project. Or when people become jerk faces, which sometimes happens. I don't know. Not everyone's perfect. Everyone's got their stressors. But I don't quit a lot of projects. Sometimes I do if usually I quit a project when I find out that there is no venture capital money. Then we kind of just fold it up and move it on, because if there is no funding to pay for stuff, we do not need to work. That's sort of how it goes. What do we got going on? Do I find working with music and sound effects easy in After Effects? No, I don't. I find it horrible. I do not like doing that. There are some plugins, I think, that can make working with audio in After Effects a little bit easier, but this is why I would recommend kind of firming up at least a musical score before you jump in. And do I work with create a color palette when/if clients don't already have one? Yes, someone has to, and it's usually me. But sometimes if you're working with, say, maybe there's an illustrator involved, maybe they do that. Maybe they can do that before, right? And that's kind of good. But color is, again, another major consideration here in the pre-production process, that you want to have that locked down. So before you're jumping into style frames, you could be using the same color in infinite permutations of style. So lock down color at this phase. I don't know why I was just gesturing to my monitor. You can't see it. You can only see me. But lock down the ideas that you can lock down. So if you can start presenting color palettes and say, hey, here's 5 colors. Hey, here's 5 other colors. What do you think of these? Is this doing it for you? And it can be hard for them to visualize. So they might be like, I don't know. I don't know what colors go with what. Well, then you can produce a style frame, right? You produce a style frame, and then you recolor it in like a few different ways. So like, oh yeah, that color's good, but the style's terrible, but I do like your colors, I don't know. That's my Owen Wilson impression for a client. I always imagine Owen Wilson would be a bad client. He's probably a cool dude. So yeah, that's... So I'm seeing a lot of questions in the chat about biz, a lot of business related questions. So I think what we'll do is I'll just stick a pin in that and we'll say, hey, what we'll do next live stream is really get into the business stuff. So if you're feeling biz questions, I know there's a bit of overlap in the pre-production and stuff, but pre-production can exist outside of a business context. It's not all client related. If in your pre-production process you're just doing it for funsies, you're doing it for yourself, still do the steps. But the client is you. It's you. You're the client. You need to answer the questions. So just replace all the times I said client with yourself. So you need to make the decisions yourself, which is the most fun way to do anything. You just sit around and stare at your belly button and, don't have to bounce ideas off anyone. So your ideas are all perfect and great. But, boop, boop, boop. Let's see. What questions are coming up on here? Ba, ba, ba. Am I the only one using CS6? You could be. CC is pretty dope. Let's see. We got about 10 minutes left before I've got to roll on to another meeting. So let's see what other quandaries are in here. I feel like I should show people. Do I have examples of style frame or storyboard? I should have prepared something. 8-bit. Okay. 8-bit. Well, 8-bit, I think the trouble is that I did not prepare them, and a lot of my projects are under NDA, non-disclosure agreements, and so can't really show you what I got. I did not adequately prepare for today's stuff, but I'll work that out on future streams. The big trouble is that sort of before a piece is released, clients don't want any of the stuff kind of floating around out there. After something's released, it doesn't really matter so much, right? I think we can show the hamburger or whatever, but it's sort of important to not show that stuff. Anyway, super sorry about that. Someone just asked what my worst client was. I take my secrets to my grave. I will never tell. So that'll be that. Do I do more plugins or custom animation? I don't work with plugins a lot, but here's something I will say. How that I want to try to let's see. What we'll do is say the AV script. What's important about this plugin question? We fancy. No, well, we're pretty fancy. When it comes to the question of plugins, custom animation, usually I'm doing a lot of it myself. I don't use a lot of plugins myself. There are some that I enjoy, but all of them have been sort of purpose required by the scope of a project. So if I'm looking at an AV script, and now we can talk about pre-production again through the context of plugins. So we'll say, if when you're reading your AV script and you're thinking, how will I ever accomplish that? Or you're looking at a storyboard and like, how do we accomplish that? Then you start to look at what plugins might accomplish those goals. So a plugin should solve a problem. And we know which problems we're solving when we look at the AV script. So it's a little bit like you're setting up all these problems in the AV script, and then you really define the problem in the storyboard, and then you solve the problem. You're solving that bad boy you're solving that in the actual production. That's the problem-solving time. And sometimes you're solving the problems with plugins. Sometimes you're solving them with labor, the thing we do, real creative labor. So. That's it. So if folks are coming in late to the stream here, we're just about to wrap it up here, I think. Can we make a video with the process of creating a style frame? Yeah, Kevin, it'd be pretty short. I'd be like, draw a picture, you're done. So that's about it. I am wearing 4 shirts, Tim. I'm wearing 4 whole shirts. I got my Tim, I'm wearing my base layer. I'm wearing my collared shirt. I'm wearing my first sweater. Then I'm wearing my hoodie. I'm wearing all 4 shirts. I'm wearing those 4 shirts because today is quite cold in the office. And I don't care to turn the heat on very high because I'm one person. I'm one person in the house with a dog. So, I just chill with all my shirts on. You did not miss another MF Doom. That's because I have moved on to Czarface. Felix N. I've got the MF Doom. Don't worry about it. I got that on lock. But Czarface is where I'm at this week. Things are getting kind of freeform in the discussion. So I think it's about time to be wrapping it up. If you enjoyed this streaming, we'll do another one next month. The goal right now is to do 1 per month. That's sort of the idea. And we could talk about rubber hose in the future times. So what we'll be doing after we close down this stream, it'll be uploaded to the YouTube channel. So if you've missed a lot of the discussion, well, it'll be archived there for all time. You can see all my whoopsies. So the next one The next one will be, when I look at a calendar, it'll be the last Friday of February, so whenever that is. And that I don't know what we'll be talking about, but I'm seeing a lot of questions about business, so we might talk about business. A lot of people also asked about expressions, so we might be talking about expressions, but I would recommend, if you're in the stream right now, turn on notifications for this channel so that you will be notified when cool things happen. And yeah. Hey, thanks, Tim. You stay warm too. Tim Riel and I live in the same city, so we could be conceivably warming each other right now, but he has to do a real job, and I do this. So, yeah, so the new topic, we might put a poll up in the community zone, so that'll be great. And thank you, everyone, for hanging out. Hopefully you've learned a bit about pre-production. We might revisit this later, or we might talk specifically about like storyboards, or get even more niche down the road. So yeah, thank you guys for joining me. And yeah, we'll do more streams as long as people keep enjoying them. Thanks again for watching. If you want to watch this again, make sure you're subscribed, turn on notifications for the channel, get involved on the Twitter at EC Abrams. And that is bye for now. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon. Boop, 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 boop.